Hi, good evening, everyone. I am State Representative Deanne Mazzochi. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to be discussing a lot of issues that deal with the roads that you travel each and every day. We often get a lot of resident calls about local road construction, road traffic, road cleanup, other traffic patterns. There's always concerns when it comes to roads about things that affect everyone's commute and also things that reflect people's experiences in terms of living in the district, particularly those who are living near busy roads and maybe are relying on vegetation or sound walls to try to protect them from highway noise. And that's one of the reasons why I invited our guests here tonight. So tonight we have with us John Basic, who is the engineer of program development with the Illinois Department of Transportation, and specifically focusing on District 1. District 1 is the district within the Illinois Department of Transportation that covers our legislative area. And also joining us tonight is Mike Storino. Mike is the president. Amount of experience, not only in terms of how do we actually build our roads, but also how are they funded, gas prices, and road construction procurement. One of the things that I do want to make sure everybody knows is that if you're watching on Facebook, we are monitoring the comments over there. So feel free to put any questions in the comments. If you're watching through the Zoom link, feel free to post any questions down in the Q&A session, and we'll make sure that we try to get to everyone's questions before the end. Just go ahead and put those questions in as soon as you think of them. And we're going to have John do a presentation first, then we're going to have Mike do some talk a little bit about things, and then we're going to move into questions. And then hopefully we should be able to conclude by around 7 o'clock tonight. Obviously, if there's any issues that we don't manage to cover, if you've got a specific issue, we certainly encourage you to reach out to the district office, which is at 630-852-8633. We also are going to be putting tonight's webinar not only on our Facebook page, but also on my state representative webpage, which is www.repmazzochi.com. So repmazzochi.com. Just to give everybody a little bit of background when it comes to the role that the legislature plays in transportation funding. So in 2016, one of the critical things that came into place in the state of Illinois was what was called the Transportation Lockbox Amendment for the Illinois Constitution. Prior to that, there had been many instances where the legislature was taking your gas tax or other funds that were allocated to roads and basically repurposing them for other uses. That constitutional amendment, which passed overwhelmingly 79 to 21%, essentially told lawmakers down in Springfield, please don't use these transportation funds for anything other than their stated purpose. And I have tried to stay very true to that when it comes to all of our other funding and also additional legislation. In fact, I just voted against a piece of legislation recently precisely because I was very concerned that there were some funds that were going to be diverted from the road fund. We also voted for, and I certainly voted for this, it was in 2019, it was a historic capital Rebuild Illinois Infrastructure and Capital Improvement Plan. And that was called Rebuild Illinois. And that's a situation where, again, we've had a desperate need for some infrastructure improvements and infrastructure funding in the state of Illinois. So I'm very glad that we had that Rebuild Illinois program so that we could finally start investing some of the funds that we need into necessary infrastructure. One of the issues that's also been in the news today or very recently is in 2022, Governor Pritzker proposed pausing certain increases that are automatically scheduled to take effect for the gas tax and 0.022 cents per gallon on July 1st to try to give families a little bit of relief in theory, although unfortunately, sometimes those types of things don't actually lead to meaningful changes at the pump. And Mr. Storino is probably going to talk to you more about that. So again, I'm very pleased tonight that we have with us John Basic from the Illinois Department of Transportation, aka Idot, and Mike Storino, President and CEO of the Illinois Road and Transportation Builders Association. So John, let me go ahead and turn the floor over to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Representative Mazzochi, to your team. Mike, thank you for joining us, and for all your listeners. On behalf of the Illinois Secretary of Transportation, Omar Osman, and the entire IDOT team, we thank you for having us here to just talk about transportation. It's what we love to do. It's what we, do and work together to make it better for all the folks and and residents and constituents of Illinois. Again, yeah, I'm John Basic. I'm the program development engineer. Basically, I oversee the department's bureaus of planning, design, and land acquisition. And one of my primary duties as program development engineer is to oversee the development of the multi-year highway program. So we'll kind of get into that a bit here. Whoops, as we kind of get through here. So.
And hey, John, before you get started, I just want to, I don't know if you can get a little bit closer to the microphone. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear you all right.
Yep. So hopefully this is better. And so again, and what a great time it is to be doing this job, as we are here, dealing with historic levels of funding being allocated to address transportation in Illinois. As the representative just mentioned, we had a state capital bill and a federal transportation bill just recently passed in the last couple of years, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So let's recap what happened with passage of the Governor's Rebuild Illinois Capital Program in 2019. It was the first truly multimodal capital program in history, in Illinois history, and it was the largest capital program in Illinois history. It included $25.3 billion for roads and bridges, $4.5 billion for mass transit, $1.1 billion for rail, $679 million for miscellaneous transportation, safety, and operational things, and also includes $558 million in aeronautics or airports related stuff, $492 million in create or basically freight rail and passenger rail kind of conflict points, and then $312 million for grade crossing a railroad grade crossing protection, as well as $150 million in ports. And basically, why is this important? Because Illinois is the transportation hub and the crossroads of the United States. Highways and rails converge here. There's a waterway link between the Great Lakes and Gulf of Mexico that pass through Illinois. We have numerous airports around the state, including O'Hare, and we are currently and it's currently regained its status as one of the busiest airports in the country. We have the largest transit system in the United States, and in this capital program is investing in all of these modes. It's going to create thousands of jobs, and this investments in infrastructure will spur other investments into our state. Bottom line, this program was a roadmap for us to be able to recover through infrastructure. So here's a snapshot of the statewide Idot fiscal year 2022 to 2027 6-year multi-year program. As of today, it's a roughly $20.7 billion statewide program. It includes about $15.8 billion for the state side of roadway improvements and about $4.8 or $4.9 billion for the local road system. Of that $15.8 billion state funding, we have approximately 67%. There's an oval kind of right here in that bottom left-hand corner. There's the majority of the money is going towards fixing our infrastructure. 67% of those funds, again, fixing the roads, bridges, and safety. And so there's a relatively smaller part that is for expansion. But again, so that allows us to comply with our federally approved transportation asset management plan. That means more frequent and in some cases maybe lower cost repairs being done, but that is done in an effort to maximize the life of those assets. Which is quite honestly, it's a fairly significant shift from the way we were kind of prioritizing the past, which was kind of a reactionary or a worst first kind of approach. But the TAMP or Transportation Asset Management Plan, or TAMP, is intended to allow us to be a little bit more proactive, or a lot more proactive, quite honestly. But one thing to note, on this exhibit is that even though some of the vehicle miles traveled reduced during 2020 during the worst of the COVID crisis, the decrease in motor fuel taxes were offset by federal COVID-19 funds, which allowed us to keep the projects moving and keep construction moving, which is one thing we're really, really proud of, that during the shutdowns that occurred, Idot and our employees and all the construction workers and the industry backing us, we were all considered essential employees, and we kept all these projects moving and going. And across, multiple disciplines of the construction, things were getting built and things were being better and, being built better for the people of Illinois. So of the overall $20.7 billion statewide Rebuild Illinois program, about $5.4 billion of those dollars will be provided for improvements to the District 1, the Northeast Illinois region that we are a part of. So just a really quick, kind of summary, that 1.3 or so billion dollar annual kind of program is split almost 50-50 for the state kind of highway system and then the local highway system. And so that allows everybody to, so that includes, again, their state programs, state roadways, state projects, but there are also, significant funding that is available to the local road programs. So that makes it that allows those folks to be able to prioritize projects and implement them with the support of Illinois DOT. So, that was the state, of Illinois' kind of capital program. If that wasn't enough, $20.7 billion over 6 years, well, then we had the passage of the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Illinois is estimated to receive around $17.8 billion in combined infrastructure funding over 5 years for all modes of transportation, similar to what we've been doing already with the state side of the program. It includes roads, bridges, passenger rail, public transportation, airports, bicyclists, as well as pedestrian accommodation. And this act is focused on climate and equity to provide a safe, resilient, and multimodal transportation system. From that $17.8 billion, the Division of Highways anticipates receiving about $11.2 billion that will be used to develop the Highway Multi-Year Program or Plan. This includes roughly $1.4 billion for bridge repairs and replacements. And this overall increase in funding from this new infrastructure bill is about a 30% increase in the amount of federal funding that we would receive typically. So, and similar to what our current highway program does, about 2/3 of our program has been and will continue to be towards maintaining the roads and bridges we currently have. And, so it's all about the asset management, trying to make sure we just are improving the general condition and safety of our roadways. For projects that are above and beyond, though, those maintenance type projects, those will be prioritized based on our data-driven decisions, or DDD tool that uses metrics and goals such as increased safety, mitigating congestion, livability, and the environment. And then, with that federal transportation bill, we call that the formula fund basis. That's going to provide a lot of our kind of meat and potato and bread and butter type projects. We're going to be able to continue a 30% increase to deliver those. But Illinois is also going to be able to compete for an additional about $28 or $29 billion of federal funding for special discretionary programs. About 12.5 billion of those funds will focus on bridge investments for economically significant bridges, while the remaining roughly $16 billion will focus on major projects that will deliver substantial economic benefits. Again, a focus is going to be on economically significant and economically beneficial type of improvements. So that's hopefully going to help spur the national economy, and Illinois has several projects that would fit the bill for these types of projects. As you all know, we're home to numerous major interstates that need reconstruction as well as capacity enhancements. And those improvements could reconnect communities, add technology to mitigate congestion, which are all factors that make them eligible for numerous discretionary programs. The corridors in the region include like I-290. There's been some recent press about I-290 from Manheim Road to Racine, roughly $4 billion project that is going to call for the complete reconstruction. I'll touch on this a little bit later too, as well as I-55 from I-355 to I-94 that had some planned improvements and adding an additional lane along that corridor. So maybe those would be good candidates. Beyond our highway and bridge projects, we're expecting to receive some additional funding that will help us improve all other modes of transportation, including about $4 billion for public transportation, $66 billion nationwide for Amtrak passenger rail. So we'll certainly benefit from some of that. About $616 million for airport infrastructure development in Illinois. And then we're expecting to receive about $149 million to help expand our electric vehicle charging network. And then the department can also apply for additional $2.5 billion in grant funding for electric vehicle charging systems. So, what routes, are eligible for some of this state and federal funding? Well, both IDOT or state routes and local routes are eligible. I talked a little bit earlier about the fact that IDOT doesn't just deal with state-only routes. We also work with the local municipalities. So in general, IDOT routes encompass all non-tolled interstates. Any tolled routes are there with the tollway, which is separate. And any Illinois or U.S. numbered routes also are, they fall under the state of Illinois kind of purview and kind of stewardship. And then we also have some, less obvious, what we call unmarked routes. And here's a list of a few that are IDOT routes in Representative Mazzochi's 47th district. We got I-290 from 83 to I-294. US 34 is another one. Parts of US 20, parts of Illinois 83, 64, 56, and 38 are all Illinois routes, as well as 22nd Street, 47 parts of 47th Street, and parts of 55th Street. And then, of course, the remainder of those other roads and streets that we all might even consider some of our main streets, those are local routes. And again, toll routes are under the ownership of the tollway and therefore not eligible to receive state or federal funding. So they are completely separate in that regard as well. And here's a sampling of some of the larger IDOT route projects that are in the process of being planned, designed, and ultimately constructed in Representative Mazzochi's district over the next few years. Of note are two roughly 25-mile corridor projects. They don't necessarily all are not within this district, but they pass through it. But they were very important projects, and they were identified as complementary projects to the future reconstruction of I-290, the one I just kind of mentioned from Manheim Road to Racine. That's a roughly $4 billion project, adding lanes and significantly making safety improvements throughout that corridor. But it was understood that not only is that project expensive, the funding is going to be years away to kind of figure out and how to strategize and get that funding. But to build that project is going to be significantly impactful to the commuting, to the commutes through that area. So it was recognized that we needed to figure out how to improve some of the parallel routes regionally to be able to not only take on some additional load, but we also wanted to make sure that they could accommodate and better improve access to transit, and so the transit could be more efficiently utilized through that part of the area. So what we are proposing to do is we were going to provide additional electronic type ITS type improvements, including new traffic signals, interconnecting the traffic signals, and maybe even including some changeable message signs along the arterials that might say, hey, if you're on Route 56 at this location, maybe jump on the expressway. The route is free and clear, it's moving. Or vice versa, you're maybe on the expressway, might be better off to get off the expressway and maybe use the local routes. So that's that type of ITS kind of technology improvements, and then improving transit access. These corridors are urban. Transit buses utilize these corridors, but sometimes it's not always easy to get to those bus stops. So there are missing sidewalks, gaps in sidewalks. There might be Americans with Disability Act type or ADA challenges for someone with mobility issues to be able to get to and from the bus. We're going through these corridors for literally 25 miles, looking at those looking critically at them and figuring out where, where improvements can be made to improve those access elements and make those corridors, be as most efficient and provide the most mobility options for those that needed to pass through it. So there's 56 and 22nd Street, which is about from 59 to Route 50, literally about 25 miles, and a very similar corridor, but Route 64, but it's from Smith Cotts to Route 50. Again, these are the ones about $13 million, the other ones about $14 million for these two projects. And a little one more project that's maybe a little less exciting and glamorous, but still really important. Route 53 at Illinois 38. There's a ramp, culvert, or kind of a big pipe or maybe a small bridge that needs to be replaced due to condition, and that's a $3.2 million project. And then there's some local road projects that that we are not doing, but we are supporting from a local planning, design, and construction perspective, because we help facilitate or support that effort, and more importantly, any federal or state funding that the locals are using, we help kind of manage that and are the kind of the stewards in the pass through for that. So a couple local roads projects that are coming through is 31st Street from Highland to Myers. There's some improvements to bike and pedestrian accommodations that are being going to be implemented. And then York Street from Crestview to Lake Street. Similarly, some pedestrian accommodations, about $1.8 million worth of pedestrian accommodations there. So as noted earlier, the state is anticipating an increase of about 30% in federal funding through the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Therefore, at a minimum, any new project identified using all that, these aforementioned metrics and approaches will be added to the ongoing development of the fiscal year 2023 to 2028 proposed highway improvement program, which will be completed. We're actually in the works right now of developing that. And ultimately, that's going to be effective July 1st of 2022. So, so we have to look forward. And one thing more to note, that if we are, if we once we get all the rules and all the criteria for some of these discretionary kind of special pots of money, we're certainly going to be going after them. And if we get some of that money sooner rather than later, then of course that goes on top of our our multi-year programs development. But if it doesn't come, sooner rather than later, then of course in future programs, we just, that money goes on top of the program, or there's adjustments made as we are going through the annual, through the annual element. So some might be thinking, where can I find information on IDOT's upcoming projects? It's like we kind of went through a bunch of stuff, and this is going to be dynamic. So it's really good to kind of talk about this, because although we had a list of millions of dollars of projects in this area right now, but with these discretionary program funding opportunities, that this list could change. So if you were wanting to check out what's going on with IDOT's programs, you can do a search, just internet search of, search IDOT multi-year plan. And then, you just click on that and it'll take you right to the IDOT website where it has the access to the publication of the IDOT multi-year plan. And then this is actually a screenshot that I've pulled up here. And at the top of that, there's some tabs. You can pull up the actual publication of the multi-year program. It's kind of a booklet looking thing. Then you can also just have lists, page lists of projects, by county. You can also look at it as in a map format, kind of regionally where projects are. Then you can click on different icons on the map that show for the different types of improvements. So it's a really nice way to kind of see and kind of get in touch with all the things that are going on around the area. And then you might also be thinking, well, where can I go to find out some information on road conditions or road construction or traveler information? Well, you can go to IDOT's website again. You can go directly to www.idot.illinois.gov, or just do an internet search for IDOT, and then find, once you get onto the IDOT website there, you can click on the Getting Around Illinois hyperlink, and then it's going to take you to a page that has all these current conditions maps, winter road conditions, traveler information, a lot of really great information. Matter of fact, if anybody has the time and the ability to do some exploring of the IDOT website, it's a great place to just look around and kind of see all the different things that information we got on there. So highly recommend that. And then to report a pothole, winter can be really hard on all of us, and then our pavements, of course, take a really big beating with the freeze and thaw, the salt and the moisture, and it's hard to fill those holes when they form and kind of get larger over the winter with the plows coming through. So we try to take care of them as best we can with what we call cold patch in the winter, but that doesn't really stick in the hole very long. We really like to have the hot mix, asphalt to be able to put in those holes and tamp that down and have that stay. So what our road maintenance crews do is, they're continually patrolling as best they can, monitoring pavement conditions, looking for those potholes. There's a lot of road that miles to cover, and any hazardous potholes are addressed as quickly as possible with cold patch in the winter and of course a hot mix during the summer. Our crews are really stretched thin, so they're not always able to see or find all the potholes. So we do rely on the public for help. So if anybody out there does kind of come across something, it's okay to give us a call. Those concerns can be called into the IDOT Communications Center. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the number is 847-705-4612. And we can make a note of it, let our maintenance crews know. And when they can get to it, they'll get out and take care of it. So just again, the number is 847-705-4612 to report a pothole. And with that, thank you for your time. I can certainly take any questions, or we can pause and listen to Mike's kind of present some information.
Yep. So again, I just want to encourage everyone, if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can post questions down in the comments, or you can send them into the Q&A here if you're on the Zoom call. But with that, I would love to turn the floor over to Mike Storino.
Thank you so much, Representative. I'm honored to be here, and I just wanted to again thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for your service. You're in this business of politics for all the right reasons, and because you look at it as public service. And I, for one, am very grateful to know you and to present what the road builders do. So the Illinois Road and Transportation Builders Association is essentially a trade association. We do training and we do outreach, work with the agencies, do some networking, work with legislators, that kind of thing. But we also we represent about 350 companies in Illinois that employ thousands and thousands of workers, from blue collar to white collar, engineers and bankers, insurance companies, construction companies, suppliers of aggregate, suppliers of steel. There's so much that goes into this industry, and I'm in awe of the people I represent too. They're entrepreneurs. They take a lot of risk. They work so hard. Sometimes there's a kind of a myth of a guy leaning on a shovel on the job site. From the blue collar to the white collar, they're really working hard. They've got their heart in the right place. I see a little note there. And that is what really motivates me every day to work on behalf of this industry, who works on behalf really of the people of Illinois. So how does this industry work? John kind of alluded to it, and I think we're still on John's screen, so I'm not sure you can see me. That's okay. I don't have any fancy slides. I'm just going to talk, and Representative, if you want to engage in a conversation or you want to ask a little bit more about what I'm talking about, I'm happy to do that. So John referenced, and John is another great public servant. I really appreciate working with him and the great professionals at Idot, from Secretary Osmond on down. John said, okay, you've got to design something. So Idot puts out what's called a bulletin to the engineering community. And they say, these are things that are coming up that we're interested in fixing. And IDOT has their criteria for that. He mentioned TAMP, Transportation Asset Management Program. And it's a wise program, ultimately. A little frustrating for me and sometimes for the end user. But they look at it this way: for every dollar you spend on maintenance, you're avoiding $3 in reconstruction. So it's more fiscally prudent to keep maintaining a road, even though you're wondering, well, why is that one getting paved when this one is in worse shape? As John said, used to be worst first. That wasn't the most fiscally responsible thing. And now in an era where the public has realized and embraced the wisdom of greater investments in transportation, then we have something. And I'm going to get to the lockbox too, that Representative talked about, and the Rebuild Illinois that really further codified. This is transportation revenue. It's only going to transportation. That's important. So then the engineers negotiate with Idot. They are selected based on their qualifications, and IDOT's very conscientious about costs too, at every step of the way, and as they should be. Then their plans are put together, and this might take a little while. Pretty easy for what's routine mill and overlay, they call it, where you just see a asphalt paver and it's they grind up some of the surface and put some. That's easy, but you've got some new interchange projects. You've got 290, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and Representative Mazzochi's role in moving that along. That's important. I'm local too, and I use that or sometimes avoid it when I have to. So then when the plans are all done, it goes out for bid for the contractors. And so I represent the engineers as well as the contractors. So the contractors look at it, and it's a sealed bid process. It's about as high of an integrity process as you can get. There is a great deal of ethics placed on this. That's important to me. And I know that's important to the taxpayers representative, that we have a system that people can trust. And I can assure you it is impossible to game this system. IDOT watches it, we all watch it. And the competitors we watch each other. So a sealed bid basically means they are looking at this, and they're sending their estimators out, looking at the plans, coming up with how much stuff costs. And stuff is more expensive now. Our industry, like everyone there, is getting hit by inflation, and maybe even more so. Steel prices have really skyrocketed. And you're wondering why steel? Well, steel gets used in bridges and culverts and these structures. Even lumber prices. Lumber is used in road construction for forms and so forth. That skyrocketed. So we're hit by it. We're sensitive to time too, and we're sensitive because if we put in a number with IDOT, and that's our sealed bid. They open the sealed bid. It's all electronic. Nobody can see anybody else's number. It's just done. We have various other statutory requirements that we have to do to put in the bid and for it to be accepted as responsive and responsible by IDOT. Then the low bid wins if we followed all the rules. And generally, it's a very competitive market. We'd like more work to come out. IDOT's doing the best they can, but with more investments coming in, that's why this traditional bid concept of design, bid, construct. So then, anyway, the low bidder is awarded the contract, and there's an agreed to schedule, and they get to work. And believe me, if there's anything that's has to be extra on the job, IDOT scrutinizes that. And sometimes there are field conditions. Didn't anticipate this utility here, or this delay was caused by something outside of IDOT's and the contractor's control. These things do happen, but we're very, when I say that, I mean the contractors, the engineers, very sensitive to timeliness too. We don't want projects to languish. IDOT doesn't. We don't. Time is money for this industry. So I know there's frustration. I get it too. Where are all the workers on this job site? There might be reasons for, primarily it's usually a utility delay, right-of-way issue, things, unforeseen field conditions that come into play. But there's a tight construction schedule. And unlike Florida, we have a pretty limited construction season. And also unlike Florida, we have a freeze-thaw cycle that John alluded to. So we have a lot more maintenance, a lot more issues that we have to contend with. They do great work, employ union labor, hardworking men and women out there. great diverse workforces, diverse companies that do the work and share in the benefits and the jobs that are available through the state of Illinois, and then the job's done. So let me do a little detour here. I get a lot of these questions. What's up with work zone speed limits? Well, that's for safety, obviously. But why do I have to obey work zone speed limits if there's nobody in the work zone? Well, you have lane configuration changes. You have change in grades from one lane to another. There are a whole variety of reasons. We need people to slow down, but mostly it's for your benefit. People think, well, if there's no construction worker, then it's safe. 9 times out of 10, the accidents and injuries and deaths in a work zone are the motorists themselves. It's tragic for us, of course, if a worker gets killed or injured in a work zone, but it's for the motorist's own safety. It's just dangerous. So I'm going to put a plug in for that. We do have a work zone safety awareness week every April. Hopefully you'll pay attention to that too when it comes up. And frankly, you'll get ticketed too. And on that note, I'm also going to put a plug in for Scott's Law. Scott's Law means if you see a vehicle off to the side, I see a representative, emergency or police pulling somebody over, get out of that lane, get away from it. We've had too many state troopers, heroes, them all, put their lives on line just by getting out of their car. So please be cognizant of that too. I also have had a lot of questions. Why not do concrete versus asphalt? What's the difference? And I talked actually also briefly to the representative about that before this. Asphalt's cheaper, doesn't last as long. It's a short answer. Concrete's more expensive, lasts longer. Asphalt makes more sense in urban setting because frankly, there's more utilities going under your arterial streets and your side streets than there are interstates. So you're going to have probably more cuts that you have to go into it to reach water or power or gas. So you see a lot of asphalt, you see a lot of concrete. I love them both because they're all our members, from Prairie and Ozinga that do the concrete to the many great asphalt pavers out there. But there's plenty to go around. Let's get into the lockbox a little bit because the representative brought that up. Not only did she support that getting on the ballot, letting the voters decide, and I round up, Representative, is 80% that voted for it, not 79%. It was 79 and change. And in DuPage County, it was even closer to 80. But it was statewide. It was from Zion to Cairo, across all demographic boundaries. Everybody thought and knows this is why we pay gas taxes. It should go back into our roads. So it's kind of a user fee. I don't even like to call it a tax. It's a user fee, and pretty good bargain. You get pretty decent road, and you pay a little bit at the pump every time you fill up. Versus the tollway, which I think is also a pretty good bargain for other reasons. But you're also paying gas tax and you're paying the tolls. And I'll get into tollway a little bit. So the lockbox got passed. And then when Rebuild Illinois came up, and thank you for your support on that, Representative, it was bipartisan because roads aren't Democrats and bridges aren't Republicans. They're all very much for the benefit of all the constituents that she has and all of her colleagues have across the state. And so they saw the wisdom of investing in infrastructure. There's such a massive payoff to our economy, our competitiveness, quality of life, safety. So when Rebuild Illinois came up, I said to Minority Leader Jim Durkin, I said, how about you enact an additional act that's called the Transportation Funding Protection Act that says, by the way, the lockbox applies to this too, in case there was any question about it. So you can be assured, even though the gas taxes went up with the Rebuild Illinois, and I should add, they had not gone up since 1990. What they went up to in 2018 did not even keep pace with inflation over the last 30 years. So it was needed. It was great. We fell way behind. I talked about the expense of letting roads and bridges go into deteriorated state. I should say that ARTVA, our national group, comes out with a bridge report. Illinois still ranks third, not very good, worst in terms of structurally deficient bridges, number of bridges. So I know IDOT's working on that. That's that complex engineering I talked about. So we have this Transportation Funding Protection Act, and I will also note that was on the heels of a Circuit Court of Cook County judge decision that we brought a suit against Cook County because they don't think that the lockbox applies to them because they're a home rule unit of government. We beg to differ. That
I'm
case is
shocked
now.
that Chicago thinks there's some different rules for them. versus
Well, exactly. It was funny listening to them and reading their briefs. They call it our money, not the taxpayers' money. It's Cook County's money. So, excuse me. So right now and we lost in front of a Cook County judge, and we did not prevail on appeal, but we just were heard by the Illinois Supreme Court. And I don't want to jinx it, but there were many justices very skeptical of Cook County's position. And we expected a ruling on that within a month or two. The hearing was in January. So let's talk about gas prices a little bit. Why is it so high? I did share with the representative a report that was done in June of 2020. Gas prices were a little cheaper then. It was done by Transportation Investment Advocacy Center, which is kind of a think tank and a research group run through our national group, the ARTBA, and they did an analysis of it. And let's talk about this. So we hear some elected officials, even including the governor, saying, "Well, let's just not have the inflation index apply this year to it." So that'll have a multiplier effect, very bad for continued investment. And that's in fact why the CPI was why the new gas tax was indexed to inflation, so that we don't keep falling behind. But what's more striking, this report shows, and there was a study done after the state of Illinois did it back in George Ryan's years, that when you reduce the gas tax, guess who sees the benefit? It is not the consumer. It does not go to you. This study showed, in fact, because there are so many complex reasons why for the price of the pump, and primarily it's price of crude oil. And if we're looking at a war in Ukraine and Russia, that's going to affect it, shock the market. Crude oil is also impacted by demand. If the economy is generally booming and getting better, and I hope we're getting better worldwide, there's going to be more demand. It's also affected by supply. And if there are some policies in Washington that cut down on supply, you're going to have higher gas prices. But there was this study showed
policies either.
State policies might not be so helpful either. And there are state policies that do that. And I'll read a little bit from this. Price variability is most impacted by crude oil prices, refining costs, profit margins, and retail and distribution factors, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. That's a U.S. Agency. So this study showed when there was a decrease, and they did a study of well over 200 states and locals that did increases and decrease. First, when there was an increase, the average was 3 cents increase per gallon. Less 1 cent got passed through as an increase, right? So there's not a dollar for dollar. When there was a decrease of 1.4 cents, less than half a cent went to the person at the pump in terms of savings. So they don't pass it along. And it was more marked in Illinois back in the early 2000s when you did a gas tax holiday. There was absolutely no decrease that was passed along to the consumer. Where did it go? What a lot of people don't know is the gas stations don't actually tax it. It's the supplier that collects the tax. And then they send it to the gas stations. Did the gas station operators pocket the difference? Maybe. Or did the suppliers pocket the difference? All I know is you're not seeing a benefit. Elected officials say all kinds of crazy things that sound good or bowl well, but I'm here to tell you that's not going to save you money at the pump. What'll save you money at the pump is more fuel efficient vehicle or driving less. But gas is inelastic. People need it. It's just an inelastic demand, and you're going to pay what you're going to pay, and it's horrible. And we hope that state and federal policies catch up with it. But I'm just trying to say, don't blame the gas tax. It's not really, part of why the prices are increasing. And if somebody promises you to get rid of the gas tax, it's an illusory promise because you're not going to save at the pump from that. What I was excited to hear John talk about is I-290. And Representative Mazzochi is a little shy, but she did vote on a resolution, joint resolution that was sponsored by both Speaker of the House, Chris Welch, who I went to law school with, and Senate President Don Harmon, who live a few blocks away from in Oak Park. And they just so happens 290 runs through their district too. And they recognize, I do, you all do, how the heck do you get to downtown Chicago or get back? It is a highway that was built in the 1950s that was supposed to handle 40,000 vehicles a day. They've got over 200,000 a day. With the, speaking of former Governor Ryan, he did some improvements at the Hillside Strangler. Now I guess it's the Broadview Strangler. Right. And I was able to enlist the assistance of the new mayor of Oak Park, village president. She knows this is a generational opportunity with the money coming through. So whenever I would bring up 290 to Secretary Osmond, he would always say, "We don't have the money." Since I met with the administration, Secretary Osmond, after the resolution passed, after the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Federal Act passed, and Rebuild Illinois, Secretary Osmond is not saying we don't have the money anymore. They're taking it very seriously. I'm hoping for quicker relief. That'll be done quicker than, say, the Jane Byrne interchange, which is, started under Pat Quinn. And they just kind of, it's a great project. It's going to help, but it's taken too long. So speaking of taking too long, and you're going to see a bill soon enough, Representative, for design build. Design build, I talked about that cumbersome, we got to procure design work, and then when we sign off on it from Idot, then we're going to put it out for bid, and then the sealed bid comes in, and that takes a long time, years. Design build basically lumps it all together, and Idot will select, or the tollway, because this would allow them to do it too. They will select the team of engineers and contractors, bring their innovation together, and get it all done kind of at the same time. Look at the risk, look at all the conditions and the utilities, and it will so streamline the process. I'm not saying that 290 is going to be on a design build model, although it would go pretty quick. It's a pretty big project. $4 billion sounds about right, because there's some improvements to the blue line too, and add lanes, and it's and reconstruction. It's just old and it needs it. But design build, and there's something called construction management manager, general contractor, CMGC, and then there's another model in there called ATC, which is alternate technical design. These are all good, innovative, tried and true, tested in most other states. Illinois is way behind the pack. So I'm going to put I'm not a lobbyist. I have a lobbyist who does it, but I will put a request. I hope you will give that some positive consideration when it passes Senate unanimously, by the way, which is great. So there are ways to do it quicker, but we don't have the tools in our toolbox yet. We hope to do that, and that is to say, to deliver the project to the end user quicker. And I think that's and the other look ahead I want people to be aware of, because this is kind of your district too. The Elgin O'Hare Western Access, 390 and 490, and I would add 190, which goes in from the Chicago side. Those are all going on right now. Access to O'Hare is going to be greatly improved, but expect a few years of some headaches as construction proceeds. There was some delay on the Western Access part, the 490, which is that ring road that basically Irving Park Road up to towards Rosemont area. On the southern end, Chicago Department of Aviation had some issues, so we got those worked out. And then the bright spot and that's a tollway job. And the bright spot for the tollway, what's ongoing now, is the Central Tri-State 294. That's pretty cool, because it's getting done quickly in relative terms, and it's going to make so many interchange improvements that will make your travel so much more efficient, so much safer, so much speedier. How tough is it to get off the Central Tri-State at North Avenue, or some of these areas, to St. Charles Road, or that whole
I think there's about
spaghetti
3 or
bowl.
4 turns and lane changes that you need to make.
Exactly, and that's going to go away. We've got some great design work that went into it. lot of credit to the past administration, the current one, who's the past one came up with it, and it pushed it along, and now we're actually seeing it come to fruition. And again, that's putting a lot of folks to work too, and it's going to get you to work a lot quicker too, and back to your kids' football game. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to really chit chat about. We're happy to work with Idot, great professional people, but we bring something more to the table from the private sector. That spirit of entrepreneurship and unleashing our energies to make our roads and bridges better for Illinois.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So, Mike and John, I've got one big question. So, John, you mentioned that there was $5.4 billion allocated to District 1, where my district is, over the course of the next 5 years. But what's the total dollar amount allocated, and what percentage of it is District 1 getting relative to our other districts throughout the state?
Oh, I don't have that handy, but Mike is going to chime
I do.
in. Easy.
I do, John.
I know you do. Go ahead and answer.
So District 1, I can answer that. There had been kind of an unofficial, look at District 1 because of its population density and the amount they contribute to the road fund. It used to get closer to 45%. Over the last several years, it's been closer to 30%, which is something that we've brought to the attention to IDOT, and and we've kind of talked that through. There have been some issues they're trying to work through, and we hope that 30% number is going to get much better. And that would mean more work in the representatives district.
Well, maybe John can answer this question. What percentage of the IDOT roads are in District 1 as compared to the rest of the state in terms of mileage or anything along those lines?
The percentage, I actually want to say it's probably, I think, like, honestly, I don't know that the District 1 breakdown of mileages as compared to the rest of the state. I honestly, I don't know.
Well, John, do you have any insight as to, what's kind of driving the change from the 45% split to the 30% split? Or how we can get that back up a little bit higher?
I do understand and can comment on that. The bottom line is that, when we're looking at the overall condition of the entire state network, in the past, the District 1, Region 1 area, because of all the same reasons we're talking about, higher density of population, more people, more just, vehicle miles traveled in this part of the state, we have, in fact, had more money being able to, to maintain our roads and bridges. And I think that the rest of the state maybe didn't get, because there's lower volume roads, the condition of the roads and the bridges in the rest of the state in general are less good of a shape than they are in the northeast part of the state. So therefore, I think trying to get everybody's numbers, everybody's condition up, I think there's been a little bit more money and kind of attention being paid, paid to that, to the rest of the state. But the one thing that this doesn't take into consideration is that there are billions of dollars, $4 billion going to transit, and certainly Northeast Illinois has the lion's share of transit, and so that you add that onto the overall spending for the state, and I think it's going to come. Those numbers are going to come way up, much closer to the 40+% for transportation spending in Illinois.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, one of the complaints that we always have in DuPage County is that I think there was a study published a few years back that said for every dollar in tax revenue that DuPage County sends to Springfield, they get about 32 or 33 cents back. So I think that could be, driving a little bit of it in the sense of just wanting to make sure that, we're getting the good value for our money. Let's talk about a little bit more though about I-290. So That's actually a road that I travel very frequently to get to my office in Chicago when I'm not taking public transportation. So John, do you have any, kind of general sense or insight that you can share with the people watching in terms of, are we going to get more and wider lanes on I-290?
Well, I personally am very optimistic. I think Mike has done just some, you guys have been doing some behind the scenes work, working with numerous elected officials. You have touched on all that. And, with the federal bill and the discretionary programs that are out there for projects like I-290 that do many things. They improve safety first and foremost. They improve air quality by adding a little bit of capacity, reducing that congestion. You're going to get environmental benefits. It's got transit. It's got bus transit. It's got fixed rail transit. Incorporating that, and then it's also got it goes through a very urban area. It kind of separates communities and whatnot. Some of those existing bridges have super narrow sidewalks. We have bus kind of interfaces with rail transit stations, with the CTA on those bridges, and they have 4, 5, 6 foot wide sidewalks in front of them. When you have mobs of people coming in and out, and it's just not conducive to good pedestrian access. And these new bridges that I-290 corridor has proposed, minimum 10 foot wide sidewalks, in some cases much wider than that. Bike racks being provided. Really making these much more pedestrian friendly, much more transit orientated, and much more connecting those communities, stitching those communities back together. From a pedestrian and bicyclist and just livability perspective. All those reasons I just mentioned. Those are all things that are being brought up over and over in this federal transportation bill. So this project, to me personally, is just so, it's a perfect fit. I'm still
waiting to hear a yes. And are we getting more lanes of traffic?
And yeah, we are getting more lanes. The bottom line to your first question is the entire project. It's basically a bottleneck elimination. We've got 4 lanes. On the west end of the project by Mannheim, and then it drops down to 3 lanes in each direction with those left-hand ramps at Harlem and Austin. Then the 4 lanes pick up further to the east. So yes. First things first, adding a lane in between, connecting the dots. And then the other component, get rid of those left-hand ramps.
Is the left-hand access off of Harlem Avenue going to be gotten rid of? Because that's huge.
Yes.
Okay.
It's both Harlem.
Those are so dangerous and just silly. But John nailed it. Whether it's the Trump administration or Biden administration, this project checks all the boxes in terms of policy initiatives they want to pursue, and it's definitely going to be such a boon to your district and all of DuPage County to increase mobility, and to have Oak Park buying into it because they had been a leader against it for a number of years is massive. And I think that's because the bridge decks, the spans are going to get much wider, as John talked about, and increase that other multimodal accessibility, bike, ped, buses, and then of course the blue line, make improvements to that. So I'm going to I've been sitting on the 290 corridor study commission since 2010, John. So I think what the representative is getting at is we're not going to have to wait another 10 years before before this gets a serious. I'm hearing, Representative, that IDOT's getting pretty serious about this and trying hopefully get into the design stage.
So along those lines, in terms, because there's some federal funding available, there's state funding that's available, and knowing that this is a very important project that we'd like to go, quickly, and because there are so many moving parts in terms of having to deal with, the CTA, both the bus lines, the trains, and everything else, is this, what is going to be done to try to actually make this one of those projects that can be done very quickly and efficiently, particularly in the, in the face of ever rising inflation costs, so that we can make sure that we actually are maximizing the use of these dollars. And it's not going to be, it's not going to be a $4 billion project that in the end winds up being a $20 billion project.
Yeah, I guess I do want to point on, touch on a couple things. To your point of like, are we going to get this project going? The answer to, and I'm remiss on this. The answer is yes. We are actually already doing stuff to get this project kind of teed up. One of the first things we did, one of the most important components of the project that needs to kind of be done first is getting a new pump station. I don't know if you guys have been driven by it. By the Des Plaines River, there's a lot of construction work going off. Yep. Right next to the river. They're building one of the biggest drainage pump stations in the District 1 region. I mean, it's a very big pump station, very deep, and that is going to connect to the I-290 corridor, which has historically really bad drainage problems, flooding, massive flooding.
Well, if you live in Elmhurst or Hinsdale, we know.
Yeah, and so it's up and down that corridor. It's a trench through this whole area, and a lot of those communities, basically, a lot of that surface water literally drains down, into the drainage system of the entire of the expressway. So it's taken on not just that expressway water, it's taken on community water too. And so this new pump station is much larger than the old one, and that was a $50 million improvement. We went ahead and got that going because we knew 290s, we need this new pump station, but we're not going to rebuild it in kind. We're going to be building it to set it up for the future. So that's in construction right now. That'll be tying into the existing pumps or into the existing drainage system. Then we're also
that should be done this year, right, John? That's one of my
so,
members.
yeah.
IHC is building that. That's about a 2-year construction project. It's massive though, and yeah, I remember back in the day, every summer there'd be a massive storm and it would shut down the Eisenhower, and that's a thing of the past now.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big part of that. Then we're sprinkling in some of the overhead bridges. The ones there's some bridges and parts of the project that are so complicated and so big, they really can't be separated from the road work. But there are some bridges that we can go ahead and do independently. And so those projects, every bridge that can be done independently has been sprinkled into our program. So we'll be able to start, keep rebuilding those overheads. They need work, they need help. But we're gonna, we're doing that. So we're not sitting by idly here. We've got money already being invested. And so then getting the pump station done is a big thing. And then once the big money starts becoming available for some of these other things, getting the railroad overpass. There's a railroad overpass. There's a couple of them actually, and then there's a CTA overpass. So like several really complex and complicated bridges that go over the expressway that we're gonna have to rebuild those first before we can even widen down below. So getting those things done and getting that stuff kind of built before we start tearing up and ripping up the roadway. So there might the duration of construction might be a number of years, but it won't be on the mainline pavement. A lot of above stuff.
Didn't Elon Musk say that he was just going to build us all an underground tunnel so that we could get from point A to point B? We're going to have a deep tunnel for the drainage. I'll tell you that. There's going to be that. That's another really big, hundreds of millions of dollars component that once we have money, we're going to start building in that deep tunnel for the drainage that's going to tie to that pump station. We're doing those types of things is what's going to help us be able to accelerate, working with industry, being creative with packaging and contract packaging, being innovative with how we manage some of that, whether it's in construction and the design phases. And here's another thing to note: this project, $4 billion project, has so little right-of-way acquisition. It's actually hard to even believe because most of these types of projects have just acres and acres of impacts, and you're spending years and doing right-of-way acquisition. This project has. Let me ask you that. I know that the tollway has quick take authorization. Does IDOT have that for projects like like the Eisenhower?
Yes, we do. But quick take, it sounds a lot faster than it actually is. It allows us to kind of move, but there's still a legal process that you still have to follow. We can't just displace people and tell them we've got, it's a very regimented process. So quick take is we do have that, but it's just not as quick as we all would like to see it. But you know,
so John, one of the other questions I got, and I think they're all kind of related to one another. So, you know, again, I think it was this idea of because there's just such a flood of work that needs to get done. Is IDOT planning on hiring additional workers, or at the very least, you know, contracting out the process of trying to get as many of these projects as we can through and out the door, you know, so that we can, you know, again, take advantage of this time where we actually do have some funds, and before, you know, inflation really massively kicks in further and makes all of these things so much more expensive. You know, everything from the systems that you run, you know, even like the computer systems and bid tracking and that type of thing. You know, do you know what IDOT is doing to, you know, again, I guess try to push these projects out the door faster?
Yeah, no, as far as hiring, we have been really fortunate to be able to continue to hire new grads from coming from college. We have a great program that we hire folks, and then they're able to kind of spend 3 years kind of training in different areas, and then kind of get a feel for what IDOT's about, and then they kind of settle in, and then we, you know, then there's promotional opportunities, and we have a lot of people that are retiring. You know, every year we have people that retire, and then there's new opportunities being, you know, opened up. So we are definitely hiring people and certainly building up our internal forces. But, you know, absolutely, you know, we work with Mike and the entire industry to work with consultants to help us out. You know, that's exactly the reason why they're there, is to help us take on those peaks, and then you know, and so that, because we can't, you know, take on that extra workload. So yeah, the consultant industry itself is going to be a vital, critical part to our success, and has always been that way, and it'll continue to be that way. So we're definitely.
I think Mike wants to jump in on that one.
Yeah. And we have talked to the administration about this when Rebuild Illinois just passed, and to the secretary, and you know, they know our position. We have consultants who are ready to jump in and augment staff, because it's a tight labor market too, and that goes for IDOT, and they're doing their best to hire people, but you know, it's almost like you can't really hire your way out of this one with all the work coming. So we're ready to stand up and be counted. Tollway has, and IDOT and Tollway are different, but they have a model called PMO, where where basically they outsource most of their engineering and processing work. They've changed a little bit with the new administration, brought a little bit more of that in-house, but the old model that they had was very effective, because basically you didn't put a lot of people on, you know, this burden the state's pension plan. When you're done with the project, you can get rid of them, and you know, and you can move people around, bring in people with, you know, different types of expertise. IDOT has some great engineers who cover the gamut of all kinds of civil engineering, but yeah, they need help, and we're ready to help them with that.
Yep.
All right, so John, I'm gonna throw some rapid fire stuff at you. So you mentioned that there was 149 million that was going to be invested into electric vehicle charging. I know at one point, and I don't remember if it was the tollway or if this was even contemplated for the Eisenhower, there was a thought about putting, you know, essentially wireless electric vehicle charging capabilities embedded within the highway itself, which would extend the range of electric vehicles. Is that something that's going to be built into future models in connection with some of these larger roads, or, you know, like a 290 type thing, or is it not?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You know, and actually the tollway, I know they've been doing some testing of that and some investigating. They might even have a test strip or two, or getting close to doing that. You know, honestly, I don't know. It's too early to tell how that would go. If it's a viable alternative, and if it's been kind of tested and it is real, I would imagine that we are, and I personally am a big proponent of integrating technology into our roadways. So if there is something that makes sense that can be done, absolutely, there's no reason we wouldn't. But I just don't know the effectiveness of that. I think there's a lot of testing that needs to go on, but theoretically there's some time. But as of right now, if we were to say we're going to go build it today and I don't think we have enough information to be able to do it right now, unfortunately.
Okay,
But
because
we
it was my
certainly
understanding
would-
there was at least one plan to have that in a tollway, and Governor Pritzker canceled that. So I just didn't know.
It's real, John. It's being deployed in other nations, and we want Illinois to be first. And we've got the Rivian plant, and we want to be, leading the charge on electric. So I'm happy to get you in touch with some of our engineers who are making this happen in other areas.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Another
it's pretty
issue,
cool.
Route 83, which runs through the heart of District 47. Because of the incredibly amount of increased traffic over the years on Route 83, as well as in Elmhurst on Roosevelt Road, Route 38, would also be in connection with Elmhurst Hospital moving to that location and that sort of thing. There's been a lot of complaints that I've received into the district in connection with sound walls and needing to have more sound walls along those two areas. I know that was something that was discussed at the outset of the capital plan when we had, when that last got passed. Do you know what the status is on getting more and better sound walls installed along those two routes?
Yeah, from the basically the noise wall policy that we follow is that if we have a project that involves changing the number of lanes on a route or the physical height of it, like if you're going up or whatever with a road, or changing or even shifting the roads closer to noise receptors or homes, things like that. Anytime we actually make a major change to the roadway, we automatically do noise studies, evaluate cost benefits of putting noise mitigation out there. We do some voting to get the feedback from the folks that are benefited from the noise reduction. And if they vote for it, they support it. We have certain percentages that need to be made. We put them in. It's no problem. It's not an issue. However, if we aren't doing those types of projects, we don't have a program we don't have what we call a retrofit program. We don't have there's no studies that will be done. It's just an existing condition. And until we do something to significantly make that improved, change to that roadway, we don't have any programs that'll go in and go to do anything about it. But that doesn't mean, we've seen some private developments and even some municipalities have explored and then worked with us and actually built noise walls on their own, kind of in permit process, but they have to fund it and all that stuff. So it's not real easy. It's not really common. I'm sorry I don't have better news on that, but
yeah, well, maybe
right
that
now,
might be a cause for some future legislation, because we definitely have some sound. We've had residents who've been complaining about the noise for years, and sound, where sound walls really would make a difference, both in terms of the noise as well as aesthetically. And likewise, there's a lot of sound walls that I think Idot may have installed at one point that were more kind of like wooden fencing that are falling into disrepair. So those, I certainly welcome you to the district to go along those areas so I can show those to you. But if there's no kind of built-in funding mechanism at IDOT, maybe there should be. Another issue with regard to, you mentioned that there were some improvements that were made to, I think you said it was maybe 13 or 14 million for 25 miles of road, like North Avenue or Ogden Avenue. So is that kind of about where it is, like roughly right now, $500,000 for a mile of road?
Oh yeah, no, those improvements are there's no actual widening occurring with either of those routes. It's more about ITS, like I said, new traffic signals, interconnecting those traffic signals. Because sometimes, if you don't have signals that are connected together, talking to each other, then you get that stop and go, you go to the next stop, then you stop. So those corridors have a lot of gaps in that. So this study is going to provide some wires in the ground that will allow them to all be interconnected so they can be talking to each other and get those nice integrated signal systems, we call it, so that you can move more traffic more efficiently and flow. So like things like that, new sidewalks, changeable message signs, to kind of give more motorist information on routing, as well as we've been working with PACE. Maybe there's some opportunities to explore transit signal priority kind of systems. So it's more like more technology kind of based improvements to these corridors, and then again getting those sidewalk linkages in there so that we can make these as multimodal and accessible as possible, so that any transit that we can integrate into this corridor and grow has the best chance of being successful and being able to move those folks through those corridors.
Okay.
So
well,
yeah,
actually, since you talked about routing, I think there used to be, I know I used to listen to it when I would hop on the Eisenhower Expressway. It was an AM radio station that would give you the updated traffic reports that you could listen to. Does IDOT still do that, or has that been disbanded in favor of online services or online reporting on traffic conditions?
Yep, no, that the Highway Advisory Radio, HAR, that is something that I believe still exists. But honestly, I don't know the absolute current status of that. That's a different area that I'm not as familiar with, and different folks are involved with that. But I could certainly get more in touch with that and find out where we are at with that.
Okay. Another question that I had, this actually came from a district resident. He has a company that supposedly has come up with ways that you can deal with particularly bridges that have rebar in them, or that involve concrete and rebar, where you can extend the maintenance life of the concrete through chemical treatment applications. If someone has a more innovative idea or a different way of thinking about something, or or as Mike mentioned, ways in which you can embed charging stations, where should somebody go if they want to be able to present a new or novel idea for how we do things within IDOT from a technology perspective?
There we do have a central office in Springfield, a group of a kind of a whole area. They actually work on pavement designs and other innovative kind of materials, features. I don't have those contacts. They could certainly provide my name, and I could certainly put them in touch with those folks, or we could connect offline, and we could pass it along that information.
All right, and then relatedly, what avenues for recourse are available for residents who do want to see a work or improvement done to particular roads, especially if they're IDOT roads? How can they kind of make their complaints known?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally get it. Honestly, the best way to do it is, if send a letter, or you can go on IDOT's website. There is a contact us feature in the IDOT website, and then you can actually, kind of send in what we call web mail, and then it'll get over to here, and it'll be assigned to somebody to address, or plain old-fashioned paper. We love our paper still, at least I do. Been here a long time, and I still, with all this email everybody's doing, I get over 100 emails a day, and sometimes those emails can easily get buried and kind of lost in the shuffle. So paper is always good, but the IDOT website, that is actually a controlled and monitored and managed kind of depository of comments and inquiries. So
all right. So another thing that happened today is the Illinois Department of Transportation announced that there's 10 million available to distribute as grants for select projects and activities. So who can apply for these grants, and can you give the 30-second version of how the selection process would work?
Boy, I'm not aware of what grants these are. I don't know if it's something that's a local roads grant.
I don't know. I got it in my email today that $10 million in grants are going to be out. I don't know if Mike, if you've got any insight on that one.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know.
Yeah, I apologize.
Sounds like ITEP.
That's another area I don't necessarily oversee and get directly involved with, but I sometimes will see stuff peripherally, but I was not aware of anything that had gone out today. Sorry.
All right. One question that came in from a district resident was people get notified through their email if their iPass is expired. If they can't access their email, how do they find out? Or if there's money left on their iPass and they want to get it refunded, how can that happen? I know that's not necessarily an IDOT issue, that's a tollway issue. I don't know if anybody's got some insights on that one.
I do have a little insight. Tollway has a pretty good web-based customer service approach. So that constituent of yours can, if they've already signed up their account online, which many people do because you can make your payments and check your progress and pay for maybe a toll you miss if you left your transponder at home. Then they could just go through there and get the refund through there. They use the actually, I don't know if you know this, Representative, Lighthouse of the Blind they use for their customer service center. So people who are visually impaired are employed by Tollway, and so they have a pretty big customer service center that you can actually talk to a real person. But I would say to that constituent, try online. If that doesn't work, or if you're frustrated, call their number. And if that doesn't work, have them call you, and I know you can cut through red tape anywhere.
I think probably even 90% of the time in the district office is probably spent doing exactly that. So again, I guess, the one final thing that I would want to, certainly emphasize to IDOT is obviously transportation is incredibly important in our district. Not only do we need to have, obviously, our district is very connected to the commuter rail system, and we're close to O'Hare, so those are very important to us. But also, we rely on a lot of these major IDOT roads to move around the district, as efficiently and effectively as we can. So, with inflation on the rise, the faster these projects can get out the door, and whatever different ways of doing things or thinking about things that IDOT can do to try to get these projects going and moving. I think our district residents will be very grateful. And, and yes, we do want to make sure that those road fund dollars are improved for District 1 because those roads do, they get used so heavily, they wear out so quickly. We certainly don't want to be falling behind because these roads do drive our economy and letting people get to and from, and they're absolutely essential for our economic growth, and particularly in DuPage County. So ultimately, I don't know if either of you want to do your last 30 seconds, but we've definitely gone over our time limit, but I do very much appreciate it because this is really helpful, really informative. And I want to make sure that our residents really get a little bit more of the nitty gritty in terms of how our roadways work, what they're you can call it a user fee. I'm still going to call it a gas tax, but what those road funds are actually going for, and why we need to preserve and protect them, and make sure we can keep everybody moving. So, John, I'll give you 15 to 30 seconds to wrap up, and then I'll toss it over to Mike.
Oh, thank you, Representative, and thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks, Mike. You provided some really great matter-of-fact insights on all things transportation, so much appreciate that. One last public service announcement. It's construction season's coming up. While driving, please slow down, put the device down, and also be extra careful when approaching and passing through a construction zone. Thanks.
And I'll be equally brief, Representative. I could go on about thanking you for this public service. Residents really are curious about this industry and IDOT and how it works, and hopefully we shed a little light on that. And remember, the folks in this industry are your neighbors and your friends. We're all over. We want to contribute to your neighborhoods and your communities, make it a better place to live. And I know with great public servants like the Representative and like John and his colleagues at IDOT, we're going to help make that happen for you. So thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to make sure that I close with a couple things. Number one, the people who actually do the work of building our roads and bridges. This is not easy work on a good day. It is, it's hard on the body. It's, but it's critical work. It's important work. And, I don't think anybody who has ever watched people lay rebar in 90-degree heat or, filling potholes in the middle of winter. These are the people who I've found who do this work. They're very dedicated to their jobs, and they take a lot of pride in the work that they do. So I do want to make sure that we are also giving them a very grateful, thankful shout out, because again, without them, we would not be able to get where we need to go. I do want to just conclude then by letting everybody know. So again, this is been a webinar hosted by me, State Representative Deanne Mazzochi. You can reach us at 630-852-8633 or through email at mazzochi@ilhousegop.org or through our website, www.repmazzochi.com. And if you really are concerned about trying to get a hold of us, or you don't remember all the details of that, you can go to the General Assembly's website, which is, I call it ilga.gov, ILGA, or Illinois General Assembly.gov. And if you go on there, click on House, click on Members, that'll also get you to all of the information that you need to have to make sure that you can reach out and contact us. I would encourage everyone, please do sign up for our district newsletter. You can also do that at repmazzochi.com. Thank you for those who are also watching on Facebook. If you're watching this on Zoom, our Facebook page is Illinois House 47. If you like us, you can also get some daily updates. But ultimately, I want to finally conclude by thanking our gracious panelists oh so much for doing this. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy days. And hopefully this will be really interesting and informative from our residents, and we can touch base again soon. Maybe when we have a little bit more information on what's going to be happening with I-290.
Right, the ribbon cutting.
Exactly. Well, hopefully we'll get some more information out before
Yeah.
that. But yep, exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And again, if you want, John, if you can share copies of your slides with our office, we'll make them available to anybody who'd like to write into the office, and we'll also make them available as well at the website and at a link on Facebook as well. So thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you can give us some more feedback and on some other topics that you're interested in, so we can get you information about what's happening when it comes to your state government. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.